Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. You said people only need to walk for cardio to be healthy. I do and walk fast, but when I run or jog just for a few minutes, I'm already winded, probably because I'm not used to it, but it makes me feel as if I'm out of shape. Yeah, as far as just basic health goes, brisk walking for 30 minutes a few times a week will give you most, if not all, the health benefits that you really want to get out of cardio, meaning getting up, getting your blood circulating, working on your overall endurance. I mean, you could walk further than that as well, and it would improve overall endurance. I think the difference we're talking about here, though, is basic health versus actual athleticism. And in the case of athleticism, you really need to factor in either conditioning or endurance there. And yeah, your conditioning sucks if you struggle jogging, but you know what? If you've been walking briskly for a while, you already have a base endurance, you already have a base cardiovascular capacity. So if you started jogging 3 times a week, within a couple of weeks, you would find it to be really, really easy. It's the issue of just adapting to it. It would be the same thing if you started jogging a little bit and then you find you don't have any true athletic level of endurance and you can't run a marathon. You know, it's just understanding that there are different degrees of athleticism, conditioning, endurance, and some things you're just trying to get baseline health benefits, get most of the health benefits. You're going to get it from just brisk walking. So that's what people need to remember. There's a difference between athleticism and basic health. And a lot of times these minor things that can give you the basic health, like again, you can get 80% of the health benefits of any degree of cardiovascular conditioning with just brisk walking. So you don't have to do anything extreme, maybe even 90% of the health benefits. Same thing with weightlifting. You can gain 90+% of the health benefits just lifting moderate, twice a week. You don't even have to really go that heavy. You don't have to get to where you even squat 300 or 400 pounds or deadlift 400. Those are athletic goals, not just health and fitness goals. So you need to understand the difference between the two, and that just reaching peak health doesn't require anywhere this extreme of training as obtaining a really solid level of athleticism. So just think about it from that perspective. And you know what? The thing is, at the end of the day, humans gain endurance easier than any other performance element. So now that you've got a baseline endurance, I think you'd find that if you branch over into other types of specific endurance training, whether it's jogging, running, even doing marathons, things like that, you'd find it wouldn't be that hard for you to get yourself to that level of conditioning if you're already basically in shape. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I'm losing a lot of strength on my cut even though I'm keeping my current protein intake at 220 grams a day while currently weighing 220 pounds, staying around the 6 to 8 rep range on most of my compound lifts, 8 to 12 on isolation, push-pull 4 times a week. Should I be decreasing my reps and increasing my protein even more? I really want to lose fat, but I also want to keep my strength as much as possible. Would a refeed day help me? Please help. Thanks. All right, brother, it sounds like you're cutting too quickly without refeeds. Honestly, 220 grams of protein, if you're still losing strength while taking in that much protein while cutting, you're trying to cut too fast, or you're trying to train with too much volume with high intensity. The thing you need to realize is that, yeah, you can train heavy, you could train with high volume, you could do whichever you want to do while you're cutting. But the thing is, you can't be running sets to failure. You can't be trying to push yourself to the limits to where you're trying to gain strength. You're trying to gain muscle, because when you do that and you're cutting, unless you're cutting absurdly slow, like I'm talking losing a pound a month, not 2-3 pounds a month, not a pound every week, none of that stuff. If you're trying to actually gain strength and muscle, it's not going to work for you at all. And it sounds like you're a pretty big guy already, so you should realize that by now. Know your body well enough to know that any sort of fast cutting, you're going to regress. And if you're trying to actually make gains instead of just going in and saying, what do I need to do to burn calories and what do I need to do to maintain my strength and muscle in the gym? And sometimes that means if you've been able to deadlift 500 pounds for sets of 5, you might need to cut down to 480 for sets of 5 while you're cutting, because you know what? That will maintain your strength levels. That will maintain your strength. That will maintain your muscle mass, but it won't be pushing your recovery beyond the ability to recover. So if you're coming in and you're doing really difficult sets and you're doing max effort work or training to failure and stuff, and you're losing weight while cutting, of course your strength is going to regress because you're impeding your recovery ability instead of saying, what do I need to do to maintain it? Now, that being said, can you use weight training to help burn extra calories? Yeah, you can do weight training or cardio for that. Either one works. I would tell most guys focus on maintaining your strength and then do extra cardio to burn calories, but there are people who successfully do the other approach as well and just do tons of volume. And you know what? There are plenty of people who do that successfully. I just think it's difficult to recover from. Hence the reason I try to push cardio more for the actual calorie burn. So that being said, what you're probably doing, you're either pushing yourself too hard in the gym while trying to lose weight, or you're trying to lose weight and body fat too quickly and you need to scale it back a little bit. And I think if you scale back the weight loss just slightly and back the intensity down just one notch or half a notch in the gym, I think you'll find that your strength is going to maintain a lot better. You'll be able to keep what you have and continue to lose body fat. All right, next question. Hey Jason, can your new 1 to 3 set intermediate program be used effectively by a late novice who doesn't want to spend hours trying to claim 10 to 20% more strength and size gains? Of course, she should make sure to progress faster. Let me know your thoughts and keep up the good work. You know what? I think that's perfectly acceptable, particularly considering you're saying you don't want to spend huge amounts of time in the gym, and that program is flexible and allows you to pick how much time you want to spend in the gym based on your needs. You know, you're going to be in there lifting anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour, but it's based upon which variation and model of the program you run. And that's why I left it really flexible for that purpose, so that you can decide what meets your lifestyle. And if you want to run it and get in and out of the gym 3 times a week at 30 minutes each, yeah, you can run that variation of it, and you'll make gains just fine. And because you're still in the late novice phase and not a true intermediate, you're simply going to find that you're going to progress faster and easier. And ultimately what that means is you will probably, on all of those exercises that you're doing, you'll probably be able to add a rep every single session. So if you're just doing what you're able to do and you run the program the way I kind of broke it down as far as making the progress and the progression rate based upon are you hitting grinders or not, and if not, you know, continue to increase reps. And once you reach that 8 rep threshold, you increase the weight. What you're going to find is that if you're able to progress faster, you're automatically going to progress faster if you're following my instructions there. So there's no extra need to really pay attention to it between a late novice and an intermediate. You're simply just going to add reps more quickly. And, you know, in which case sometimes you might gain 2 reps in a session. So again, it's going to be fine, and I think it's totally acceptable, and it will help you finish out your noob gains. And even if you're, you know, say 9 months into one of my novice-oriented programs and still have 3 months left in it, and you choose to switch over to that intermediate program, you're still going to reach the novice strength standards doing it. Will it take you a couple weeks longer? Maybe. It might take you 2 weeks longer, or 4 weeks longer, so it might take you 4 months instead of the 3 months to do it. But you know what? You'll still get there because you're still using progressive overload, still using high frequency, you're still using acceptable training volume. That's the secret. That's the key to gaining strength and size. So if you run it that way before you reach the intermediate, you've already built your base as a novice, then yeah, I think it'll be perfectly acceptable. I think it'll be fine. All right, next question. Hey Jason, since progressive overload is the main factor in muscle growth, doesn't any kind of progression give basically the same amount of muscle growth depending on how advanced the person is, or if they're eating, sleeping enough, for example, improving on a 5x5, 3x3, or 5x3, or even improving on one given work set? Yeah, there's some truth to that. And at the end of the day, as long as you're getting stronger on at least one set of one of your basic lifts, or particularly one of your basic lifts that hit each basic muscle group, you're probably gaining muscle about as quickly as you're going to gain it. Now, could there be variations in that? Meaning, if you used a different method, could you be gaining maybe 10% more muscle per month? Yeah, probably. But you know what? Are you going to notice 10% more muscle per month? Probably not, because if you're not really a novice anymore and you've been in the gym training hard for over a year, you're not going to be gaining more than about a half a pound of muscle per month anyways. Are you really going to notice a difference between a quarter of an ounce extra muscle gain per month? Probably not. So at the end of the day, as long as you're progressing on your major exercises, at least most of them, regularly, at least once a week, you're seeing at least one of your major exercises increase on at least one set, you're probably, unless again you're a ranked novice, in which case you should be seeing an improvement almost every workout on something, if not everything. But if you're out of the novice phase and you're seeing any progress on the big lifts regularly, yeah, you're probably gaining muscle at somewhere between 80 to 100% of what you could possibly be gaining. And everything else is just academic at that point. It's just extraneous. Because at the end of the day, as long as you're getting progressive overload on something, even if you're just doing one set of 3 reps, which I would not recommend, by the way, for muscle growth. I don't want people to think I'm recommending that. But even if you're getting stronger on that, and that's all you do, even while it's not ideal for gaining size, you're still probably going to be growing decently off of it because you're actually progressing, and the progressive overload is going up on big lifts. And that's what will put the most size on you. It might not be 100% of the size gains, but it's going to be the vast majority of it no matter what. So really, at the end of the day, you're right. As long as the progressive overload is there, you're probably going to grow at a decent rate no matter what you're doing. Again, but the trick is the progressive overload there? And sometimes that's where the fine tuning comes in, to where you actually do have to pay attention to your programming, because sometimes the progressive overload stops, even though you think you're doing everything right. And that's because you're possibly not growing, not adapting, not getting sufficient stimulation. So there's something else going on there at that point. All right, next question. Hey Jason, what are your thoughts on reality TV shows like The Biggest Loser and Extreme Weight Loss? Most of the time the women are over 250 pounds and their trainer always recommends she eats 1,500 calories a day. Would this type of dieting hurt a woman's metabolism? Good question. You know, the thing is, I don't believe in this metabolic damage nonsense. I honestly think it is nonsense, and I think there's just a few people out there trying to promote it because they base part of their careers on it, and it's a big marketing niche for them. There's people who are selling metabolic repair services for hundreds of dollars to, dozens, if not hundreds of people. So you need to keep that in mind with that. As far as it damaging metabolism, no. Yes, these women are 250 pounds. But, if a woman was 130 pounds, you might put her on a 1,500 calorie a day diet also if she wanted to lose a little body fat. What you need to realize is that these women have massive energy reserves. A 250 pound woman can easily lose 5 times as much body fat, if not more, every week as a 130 pound woman without losing any muscle mass. So keep that in mind. In fact, if you start having them resistance train with any degree of intensity, some of these 250 pound women could be losing 3 or 4 pounds of body fat every single week while actually gaining a little bit of muscle mass. So if they're able to lose body fat at a massive rate while gaining a little bit of muscle, their metabolism is only going to go down in the sense of, if you shed 100 pounds of lard off of your body, you're going to burn less calories. Carrying around 100 pounds of lard is going to make you burn through calories. If you don't believe me, go put 100 pounds in a rucksack, or even a evenly dispersed one with the front and back, and go walk around with it and try to do day-to-day activities, and tell me you don't burn an enormous amount of extra energy from that extra 100 pounds. So their metabolism loss is going to come from the fact that they've shed 100 pounds of lard off of their fat asses. So when you look at it from that perspective, sure, their metabolism is going to go down quite a bit. But is it due to hormonal shifts? No, not really. And there's no reason, as long as they're under the care of a medical doctor, that these women can't be on a 1,500 calorie a day diet and be losing 3 or 4 pounds of body fat every single week. Now, the problem is that ultimately the Biggest Loser stuff is that it seems like a lot of it's crash dieting and doing a lot of really stupid stuff instead of a really consistent, solid program that someone could do for life. Like any sort of boot camp type thing is really a bad idea because it's trying to get you to kickstart something, which is stupid. Kickstarting something never works in the human body. In fact, it gives short-term results, and then there's oftentimes blowback. But could these women go on balanced, healthy 1,500 calorie diets and do resistance training and cardio every day and safely lose weight? Yeah, they just might do it slower than what they have them do on these Biggest Losers. And that's the problem, is that ultimately they have them do crash course type thing that there's no way they could maintain as a lifetime endeavor. And so they get used to doing it that way. And then when they can no longer live that lifestyle, once they've lost a lot of the weight, they tend to rebound because they've been taught crash course methods to lose body fat through trying to shock their body and doing extreme things, rather than just a change in lifestyle that makes it nice and gradual and smooth and something that they could maintain for many years on end. And that's why they regain the weight. It's because they haven't been taught the proper tools and methods to keep the body fat off by changing their lifestyle. Instead, they've had a bunch of crazy boot camp type nonsense thrown at them, and sometimes diets that are difficult to follow. But it's not the caloric intake that's the problem there. That caloric intake is fine because they're going to lose fat pretty rapidly on it. And you have to remember that someone who is very grossly morbidly obese with 50 or 100 pounds of extra body fat they need to lose, they can lose body fat at an absolutely enormous rate per week compared to other people without it really becoming an issue as far as slowing down thyroid function or losing muscle mass or things like that. They have a massive reserve to draw from that the body will very easily and readily tap into without any problems. And that's the difference that you need to remember, is that the leaner you get, the harder it is to lose body fat without losing muscle mass and without having energy problems and everything else. But someone who's that obese, totally different animal. They have basically an enormous fuel tank that their body can easily tap from without having any other issues associated with it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. You recently stated that in order to bring a lagging aspect up, one could implement an ultra high frequency but low daily volume approach to a given body part. Could this approach be applied to the whole body, training perhaps one set per exercise, not to failure, but every day? Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. There are variations of this, such as things like Bulgarian Light, and I have actually done an example for you guys to where I didn't do sets, but remember a while back for over 2 months straight, I deadlifted every single day. But what I did, I ran something like 85% of my max, and I did 5 singles throughout the day, waiting at least 5 minutes between those. And again, 85% of your max for one rep really isn't taxing even on a deadlift. Just set up, had good form, pulled, and set it back down. And it might have even been as low as 80% of my max, because I think I was pulling about 220 kilos, and I just pulled like 270 not that long before that, a couple months before that, on the kilos. So yeah, it's totally doable. It's a viable method. The thing is that you don't want to induce excessive amounts of metabolic fatigue, meaning you can't do really high rep work, because you're going to get close to failure, really close to failure anyways, if you're not careful, particularly on the big movement. So if you're going to do an approach like this, I would recommend that you try not to go over about 10 reps. And if you're going to do 10 reps, it needs to be a weight you can probably do 14 or 15 reps with. This sort of approach works a little better with slightly lower reps, particularly even singles and things. But yeah, if you wanted to come in and work, say, the 5 to 8 rep range with your 10 to 12 rep max, and you did one set every single day for just accumulating volume, yeah, you would find this approach a very effective method. And in fact, it could be training, because you don't really need warm-ups. That's something people need to factor in. If you're working with submaximal weight, non-failure weight, you probably don't need warm-ups. So for example, you could come in and you could do one warm-up set of squats, do a squat, maybe one warm-up set on the deadlift for a couple reps, go straight to your deadlift, your 5 to 8 reps, and then you could ease right into your other movements. You could probably do bench press, overhead press, some rows, some curls, side laterals, tricep extensions, all one set. And you could actually find that if you were efficient with this and got your weight switched around quickly, you could be done in 20 minutes. Again, 6-7 exercises, maybe 8 exercises tops, so just one work set real quick, not to failure. You don't really need breaks between those. You could go right into one warm-up set on the big lifts immediately after you just swap the plates around and get everything set up. Wait 2 minutes and go right into your work set. Boom, 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 boom. You could be out of there in 20 minutes easily, 25 if you play around a little bit. So yeah, this sort of method's absolutely viable if you wanted to try it. Wouldn't always be my first choice, but for people who wanted to try this method, it's totally viable. And remember, guys, I did that with deadlifts. And of course, peaking for meets, I did squats every single day. But again, I would go to a training max, only around 85 to 90% of my max. And again, that's a Bulgarian system. But post meet, yeah, you guys remember I was doing 5 singles on the deadlift every single day with a submaximal weight. And I didn't overtrain, didn't have fatigue issues. And I was doing a pretty hefty amount of cardio while doing that also. So it was just about accumulating workload and volume. Totally doable though. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I'm doing high volume training, less frequency, 9+ sets per muscle group, like 9 to 12 sets for quads, 12 sets for hamstrings. As an example, this is what Dr. Brad Schoenfeld recommends to maximize muscle gain, and what Chris Jones has recommended past years. I do see great gains from high volume than low volume approach, more size, and my lifts go up every week, but it makes me less motivated, fatigue, and actually I can't do that for years. Probably I would quit. Isn't the 5% more gains worth it? All right, and here's where we get into a problem here. Yes, we've had Dr. Brad has said doing 9 to 12 sets per week per body part. Again, your total volume. Remember, things like squats and deadlifts both work the hamstrings, etc. Okay, here's the problem we run into. That is for maximum muscle gains. But here's the thing that you have to realize. When you do anything in your life, doesn't matter what it is, where you seek maximum results, everything else in your life has to take a secondary approach. And that's what you have to understand. Brad and these other people, when they put out this information, are talking about your number one goal in life. If you're seeking maximum gains, your number one goal in life has to be gaining muscle mass. And at the end of the day, you could gain half a pound or a pound less muscle per year, right? So let's say you're going to chase your new gains and you wanted to gain 15 pounds of muscle. Instead, you gain 14 and a half if you didn't gain your maximum. But it has to take priority in your life. Just like if you say that you want to get the maximum GPA possible while going to pre-med, or the highest GPA possible, that your absolute maximum best that you can do in school. Well, if you want to do that, you're going to have to curtail your social life a little bit. You're going to have to curtail working a real job a little bit. You might have to cut to part-time. You might not even be able to work at all and still maintain the highest possible grade, your maximum GPA. Same thing, if you want to maximize your 1 mile run times, that has to take priority in your life. You have to reschedule your entire life around it. And in your case, you're feeling less motivated. You're feeling more tired. You're feeling a little lazier. Why? Because you're chasing maximum gains on your muscle mass, and other things are going to have to take a back step to that. So you ask, is it worth it? I don't know. You tell me. Is being tired and lethargic and less motivated in your day-to-day life, or maybe being a little more irritable because your body's always in recovery and adapting to the maximum muscle gains, is it worth it? You're the only one who can answer that. I personally don't think it is, unless you're competing in something at a professional level and you need that extra half ounce or quarter ounce of muscle a year. That's your call to make. You take someone like Chris Jones. Chris Jones has a 6-figure income off of YouTube. He markets himself primarily upon his look. That is the biggest chunk of his money with what he does. And again, if he didn't look as good, he might make $50,000 less a year with the amount of stuff that he puts up. So you've got to question that. Is it worth it for him? Hell yeah, it is. He's making an extra 50 grand a year by spending more time in the gym. Doesn't have anything else to worry about outside of that. And so that's his prerogative. When you're talking about large sums of money, difference is probably worth it. Is it worth it to you? I don't know. I would step back and say, what else do you have going on in your life to where you think that gaining a half pound of muscle a year extra is worth actually being more tired and lethargic in your day-to-day life? I don't know. You have to assess that for yourself. So you have to tell me if it's worth it. But remember, anytime you chase maximum gains in anything that you do in life, whether it's I'm going to earn the maximum amount of money I can earn this year, well, that might require you to work 100 hours a week or 2 or 3 jobs. That might require you to be cutthroat. That might require you to breach your ethics a little bit, maximize GPA, maximize muscle gains, whatever it is. That has to take a priority over other things in your life, and only you can decide if those things are worth it, not me. All right, next question. Talk about pre-workout meals. I always seem to have inconsistency with my hunger and energy before a workout. How long before and what to eat, carbs, which kind, or fats and protein. All right, people on the internet are going to debate about this, but as far as actual real coaching circles go and all of that in the serious sports world, there is no debate on this. People are going to debate, fat, or you need these pre-workout amino acids or whatever. You know what? None of that matters. What you need pre-workout, what gives you the best training results, is carbohydrates. How much? I don't know. What's your total caloric intake for the day? How hard you're going to train? I will say, though, that it's a fine balance that there isn't a set figure for. Probably an hour to 30 minutes before you train. Probably you don't want to do it walking right into the gym, but give yourself at least 30 minutes to start digesting it. You need to consume an amount of carbohydrates with a moderate amount of fiber, not ultra high fiber, that you can consume, a quantity that you can consume that keeps your energy up for the duration of your workout, because I don't know how long your workout is. I don't know how much glycogen you're burning through. and it needs to be an amount that doesn't fill your stomach up to the point to where you bloat, to where you feel sluggish, or to where you feel like you're going to vomit. And I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of guys make. Guys who eat too much and they eat the wrong foods, they try to consume a bunch of protein shakes or whatever before they train, and then they throw up on leg day or whatever. A lot of that is picking the wrong foods before you go in. Maybe too many oats. What I would recommend is starchy carbs. Not overly high fiber starchy carbs is probably your best bet. A little bit of rice, some cereal, some pancakes, waffles, anything like that. Good choice. You don't want to consume large amounts of fat because you're not trying to slow down the absorption of it. You don't want large amounts of fiber because you're not trying to get bloated and slow down absorption. Just get yourself some nice starchy carbs in. I don't care whether it's some potatoes or some rice or some pancakes. Consume enough to where you don't feel bloated and full, and enough to where you're not running out of steam by the end of your workout. And what you need to consider is that if you're running out of steam by the end of your workout, but you're not able to eat anymore without feeling bloated and like you're going to puke and your performance suffer in the gym, then maybe your workout volume is too high for you personally. Just different factors that you have to work with and figure out for yourself. But starchy carbs are generally your best pre-workout before weightlifting. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I am new to this channel, but my boyfriend does your new intermediate program and he loves it and is trying to convince me to go lift with him. And now I really want to. The problem is I have scoliosis, half a centimeter on the left, and I don't know what's best to do. My back, hips, and shoulders do hurt sometimes. I hope you can help me. All right, good question. There's limited information I can really give you with your scoliosis because you are dealing with a spine issue, and I don't like to get a lot of advice to people with spine issues. However, half a centimeter isn't terribly bad. I did used to train with a really good friend of mine many years ago, and he had pretty severe scoliosis. His was way more than that. He found that he couldn't squat no matter what he did, and even talking to his specialists and everything, he struggled with the squat a lot, but he was able to deadlift. And I do know another guy who deadlifts well over 600 pounds who also has scoliosis. I know him personally, have competed with him. So what, in my experience, a lot of people with scoliosis find the deadlift pretty easy, but a lot of them struggle with the squat for some reason. So what you're going to have to do is mess with different exercises, and you're going to have to see what actually hurts and which ones you can maintain a proper bar path on. And hopefully your boyfriend can help you with that quite a bit. Hopefully he's learned some stuff from this channel or can read some biomechanics books and try to help you with that. But what I am going to recommend that you do, no matter what course of action you take, you need to consult your doctor first. See if your doctor can refer you to a sports physical therapist who might be able to give you some advice and pointers, because when dealing with any sort of back issue like that, you are going to want to get some actual professional specialist medical advice before you undertake training. You know, it's just not worth risking harming yourself without getting that advice. But I would recommend that you ease into a really easy program. I have some pretty mild novice programs that you could ease into. But again, you're going to have to modify those programs based upon your body and what exercises you can or can't do, and run it by your specialist always. So run the routines by your specialist and see what they think and get their opinion on it before you do it. And I mean, just for liability reasons, I need to give you that advice because I don't want to hurt you, and I don't want you to get hurt by my advice and then be upset with me in any way. So consult your specialist, but you might have to do something to where you replace the squat with a leg press. There's just going to be modifications you're going to have to make to these programs to make it work, unless your body just lets you do them. You know, your scoliosis might be mild enough that you don't have any problems just running a standard program. And you're going to have to get in there, experiment a little, talk to your specialist and find out. All right, next question. I irritated my patellar tendon, I assumed, squatting last month. After 12 weeks beltless instead of a deload, I kept pushing for one more training. I used reverse bands with my belt, and I got a 1 rep max of 495, way over what I normally use. And I did like 12 sets with ramping weight, all over 4 plates, with pause squats and more. Pointless volume, but was lots of fun. The day after, I had knee pain, and I haven't been able to get rid of it since despite partial rest. My knees fail sometimes when I'm walking. My strength isn't limited, but the pain afterwards is quite acute. I'm wondering if it's just tendon irritation or if it might be worse. I have a meet coming up in 8 weeks. I heavily increased stretching and foam rolling, but almost anything can hurt, even push press. All right, brother, I'm going to try to give you some frank advice here. I'm going to be brutally honest like I usually am. You fucked up, and you fucked up really bad. You need to cancel your meet. You're done for the year. When you know when you've been doing a 12-week phase of something like beltless training and you're going to switch over to your belted training to start peaking for a meet, you chose not to deload. And by choosing not to deload and on top of it to come in and do a really stupid high volume, ultra increased volume over what you normally do in a workout instead of a deload, you injured yourself. You know what? You're young. You're still building your strength base. This should be a learning lesson for you, but you fucked up. You need to cancel your meet. And that's something you should have thought of when you're going into as a competitive lifter. You knew that you were supposed to deload. You knew you needed to deload at the end of a 12-week phase, and instead you came in and did an extreme workout. Anytime you come in and do an extreme, crazy workout to shock your body, you need to accept the fact that you're taking a risk that may throw you out of competition. Competitive lifters can't do silly shit like that. Leave that for the young kids who watch bodybuilders and want to come in and shock their body. If you're going to be a competitive lifter, you can't afford to do nonsense like that. This is your one learning curve. You're going to be out for this powerlifting season. You need to chalk that up as a lesson learned in life. You need to spend the next month rehabilitating that knee. You probably need to go see a specialist and figure out what's going on, see if it's just soft tissue or if there's actual inflammation of the tendon or the joint, that you damaged the joint in some way. But yeah, your training load and volume and timing was very inappropriate and you have injured yourself. You absolutely are not doing that meet in 8 weeks. I'm going to recommend that you not do it. Instead, you should have deloaded for a full week and then started your peak and gradually eased into a peak knowing you had a meet coming up, because that was a month ago. You're 8 weeks out. You were 12 weeks out from a meet and you skipped a deload. That's it. You're done. You're going to have to rehabilitate that knee or you're done with competition. That's it. You're not going to be able to squat again. You're not going to be able to push, press, anything like that until you sort that problem out. Cancel the meet, get in, rehab that knee, and let it next year, when you get into your competitive season next year, you're going to remember this fuck up you made. You're going to remember that it knocked you out for a full year, and you're going to ask, is the fun I'm going to have doing a crazy, goofy training session where I push myself way beyond the limits and maybe damage or inflame or tear some connective tissue, is the fun that I get from that one session going to be worth throwing myself out of competition for 6 to 12 months? And next time you're going to say, no, it's not that stupid. I'm not doing it again. But you know what? You're young. You have plenty of time to learn. Chalk it up to a life lesson learned in the iron game. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today in part 1. I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.